Well, hello again. Thank you for coming back to the Transform Your Birth podcast. I've got a really good episode this week. I've always had a list of people that I really want to interview, knowing that it's so much more, the process of pregnancy and birth and early parenting is so much more than what we're led to believe. And this particular woman, Jane Hardwicke Collings, has been on my radar for a long time because she's worked a lot with women, preparing them for birth and beyond through ritual and through the understandings of the inner work that often emerges as a process of this deep transformation that we go through when we're welcoming a child. So Jane has agreed to talk to me today, and yeah, I'm so happy to have you, Jane. Thank you so much for giving up your time.
Thank you, Tracy, for inviting me, and I'm so happy to be able to speak to all the listeners. So, hi, and here we go.
Yeah, let's crack on. So do you want to tell people, Jane, a little bit about your history and how you got to be in this field? Because I often think when I
Mm.
get called to this, I'd
Oh,
like to know your
totally.
calling. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my story started as a typical daughter of the patriarchy, although I didn't realize that that's what I was, or that there was even a thing called the patriarchal culture.
Yeah.
I became a registered nurse, so I was well in that whole world in service. And this is way back before nursing was in universities. This was
Mm.
in the hospital, scrubbing bedpans, all the things. So then I did midwifery, my midwifery training as a registered nurse at one of the big city hospitals in Sydney. And basically, what happened to me was that I had an awakening. And I didn't even know what an awakening was. I was 25 years old. And there I was doing my midwifery training primarily for myself because I wanted to have a baby and I wanted to learn all about it and I wanted to
Mm.
understand the system and all of that. But as I said, I had this awakening and I was shocked. What I saw in my midwifery training in this cutting edge, state of the art, best place you could go to have a baby was institutionalized acts of abuse and violence being done on mothers and babies masquerading as safety.
Mm.
And I just, this is back in a time before it was even realized that babies could feel things. So, like, I
Wow.
was one of the student midwives that held a baby boy down whilst he was having a circumcision, and the doctor saying, "See, oh, look, he's gone to sleep. He doesn't feel anything, you
Mm.
know?" So that
Mm.
was like happening to babies. And to mothers was just this ongoing intervention that was just causing them to not trust their bodies and think that if they weren't there, they'd be dead, and all the stretchings of the truths, if you know what I
Mm.
mean. So
Mm. We've
I,
gone
I
through this phase in history where we've taken birth out of the hands of the wise women and community and seeing it as a normal event. And we medicalized it and we've brought other people into the birthing room. And we haven't done a great job of truly understanding birth on a lot of different levels. And by what's the word? I guess no, there's a word I'm looking for where we might turn it into a clinical thing and we
mm,
pathologize it. And a lot of the interventions that get introduced are there under the guise of safety, but they often create the very problems that they then go ahead and try to fix.
totally,
That must
which
have
is,
been hard.
yeah, it's part of that like self-perpetuating system of
Mm.
creating, fear and doubt and then damage,
Yeah.
morbidity. So basically, after I did my midwifery training, I left the hospital system and went to be part of the solution at the time, this
Mm.
is in 1986. So, that's 40 years ago. And I
Yeah.
did an apprenticeship with a midwife that we both know and love.
Hmm.
And then I really basically I grew up in the home birth world. So I grew up in amongst a community of families and mothers, women who were taking responsibility for their lives and their choices and their decisions around birth, not in taking risks
Mm.
necessarily, but in terms of taking responsibility and doing their research and making their decisions and choices based on that. Like
Mm.
back in the day, and I think it still exists, that the demographic of the people who choose home birth are actually the most educated. And
Mm.
obviously, they're going to have to be the most resourced because it costs money. But
Yeah.
basically, everything I know now was through my apprenticeship, say, shall we say, to birth.
Mm.
Birth taught me about the inner journey of pregnancy, birth, and mothering. Birth taught me everything about how to flow with a process. It taught me about nature. It taught me about our nature. I was and still am a student of birth. And then in that process, I learned a lot of other things that are impacting birth because, we're led to believe that birth is this isolated incident, isolated medical event that's full of risk
Mm.
that needs to be managed by experts in an institution.
Yeah.
Now, I'm speaking on that extreme, but that's what most women are led to believe. And
Yeah.
then that results in all the things you're just saying of the unnecessary intervention, because we know that so much of the intervention today is unnecessary
Mm.
and therefore results in unnecessary further intervention with the cascade
Yeah.
of intervention we all know, and then creates the setup for the woman's next rite of passage, whatever that is, another birth, or it could be menopause if that's the next one.
Yeah.
Because what I learned was about rites of passage and
Yeah.
that birth is a rite of passage and things happen as a result of that.
Mm. Can I just, I love that your apprenticeship happened in home birth. This is one of the things that we have to appreciate is as much as the medical system on some level creates a safety net, true birth is not a medical event. It's actually a place of wellness. And we are not a walking uterus, which is often what we get treated as because the body and the functionings of the body and the way the body responds to birth is it's responding to so much more than just the birth process. It's responding to the environment, it's responding to the people around that woman and whether she feels safe or not. And it's responding to any type of whatever it is we're holding in our subconscious mind that could get in the way of the birth process. And home birth is a beautiful model of teaching. In fact, if I had my way, every person in this maternity field would start their training with home birth and then look at the complexity because often our healthcare providers have never seen undisturbed birth. They
Or
have never,
physiological birth.
or physiological birth, a birth that is moving forth in response to the physiological process without interference.
Mm.
So I know a lot of you might be out there thinking, oh, home birth, that's not for me or that's not safe. Actually, the stats around home birth make it very safe. It's got the lowest levels of intervention. You've often got midwives who have incredible skill at heading off complexity at the gate because they can see and perceive things in advance. And you're creating the very best environment for that birth to unfold without interference, because even the trip to the hospital is going to shift that woman's hormonal blueprint in that moment. So
Mm.
it's a great grounding for people to understand the true nature of birth, and what Jane's describing in her awakening has come from the very best place to see it. So, given that you started to notice and witness that it was so much more than just the birth process, what were some of the awakenings you had around what this journey can be for women, Jane?
Well, I think learning about how a rite of passage works was
Mm.
the really big moment for me of making sense of it. Because when I
Mm.
saw, and I mean, this is a long time ago, 40 years ago in a hospital, but like it's worse now. It hasn't gotten better.
Mm.
The current statistic that is so terrible is that less than 50% of women push their babies out of their vaginas now.
Mm. Mm.
Like that's a tragedy that has
Yeah.
incredible implications and ramifications and gigantic ripples, waves of women doubting their bodies and all of that. But it's in learning about rites of passage that I could understand our responses, so
Mhm.
I just thought, oh, well, these women won't come back. They'll realize what happened and they just won't come back. And they did, but they did. So when I learned about rites of passage and I learned about it from reading a book by Robbie Davis Floyd. And like this is 40 years ago. And her book then was American Birth as a Rite of Passage. Now she's an anthropologist that's focused on birth, and she's written many books and many papers. And if somebody wants to learn about rites of passage, she's kind of like the one who introduced it at birth all those years ago.
Yeah.
And the teaching of the way rites of passage work is that, so think about, and this is for every rite of passage. So think
Mhm.
about first period. Think
Yeah.
about every pregnancy. Every pregnancy results in a birth. Whatever finishes the pregnancy is the birth, whether it's a loss or an abortion or, a live baby or not. And then menopause. So whatever happens around these rites of passage or doesn't happen, who's there, what they say, who's not there, what doesn't get said, and whatever's going on in the person's world at the time, all adds up to teach them on a subliminal level, which means
Mm.
they don't even realize they're being taught. We are being, through the process of our rite of passage, which is a cultural experience, we are being enculturated, which
Right.
is just a nice way of saying brainwashed into how the culture values the next role we're going into. So at menarche, that's fertile woman.
Yeah.
At pregnancy and birth, that's mother. At menopause, that's wise woman, second half of your year, of your life. And so whatever happens teaches us how our culture values that next role and therefore how we have to behave to be accepted by the culture.
Mm.
Now, if we look at, the prequel to how we do birth is our menarche. And this is
Yeah.
what my
Right.
experience as a home birth midwife for 30 years taught me is that women's responses and reactions and experiences of birth are not isolated. They
Mm.
have a huge impact. The hugest impact is their experience of their menstrual cycle and how
Right.
they've learned to trust their body or not. And we live in a negative menstrual cycle culture and a
Mm.
negative birth culture and a negative menopause culture. But starting back at menarche, like I could see these women in their experiences around birth when things started to go in a different way to what they were hoping for, that it brought up old things, old traumas, old wounds, old perspectives about their body, all of that kind of thing. So,
Mm.
so the connection between rites of passage is a big part of it. And the previous rite of passage is the setup for the next rite of passage. And so learning all of this stuff and realizing that rites of passage create culture, and they
Mm.
create culture on the inside by the mindset our personal experience creates, which is our beliefs, attitudes, and fears. And it creates and reinforces culture on the outside because most people have the same experience and have the same beliefs, attitudes, and fears, and then live and make decisions and choices based on those. So, rites of passage create the culture and the future. So it's huge. And it's
Mm.
also wonderful because it's through rites of passage that we can hack the culture and change the future. And in terms of childbirth and how we can do that rite of passage in a better way for women is to really be part of helping as necessary, guiding if invited, to help a woman to make a decision based on all the information she can get. So, like a healed next rite of passage in birth may not be to aim for an orgasmic water birth. It could be that a fully organized, planned cesarean is the healed direction. So, the
Yeah.
big thing about rites of passage is that every rite of passage that you come to, like the next one, let me say something else first. If you don't have an honored rite of passage, a celebrated or acknowledged rite of passage, that doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
Mm.
It means whatever happens is the rite of passage and then has all those effects that I said. So, and they're not curses, they're simply experiences and teachings that we need to unravel and learn from. So, but just the opportunity is that every rite of passage we come to a fork in the road. And
Yeah.
one way is the usual way, the same old way, the way it always happens to me or in my family or with my friends. And that's often the wounded way, but we don't even realize it. It's just the way it always happens.
Mm.
The other fork is the healed way. But to even know there's a healed way, you have to realize you're on the wounded way. Then
Yeah.
you need to do the inner work that bridges the two, that sets you off in the healed direction, which actually doesn't mean everything's going to go your way. It means that you're going to begin to notice the decisions and choices that you kept making that maintained the same old, and sets you off on a more aware process. Like births are our teachers.
Mm.
And one of the most important ways we can show up for birth or any rite of passage is to do our inner work, which is basically to know thyself and
Yeah.
to know why we do what we do the way we do it, and then bring some choice and decision into that instead of just reactions that
Mm.
we've. And
Gosh.
the other huge influence here is our red thread, our mother line, our
Yeah.
female ancestors. So it's in our rites of passage that the wounded behaviors, the trauma responses, and the strengths that we have inherited from our red thread, our mother line, rites of passage are one of the places where they show up. And
Mm.
that's not bad luck. That's because there is so much healing opportunity at our rites of passage that can completely change the trajectory of our life and therefore the future of our red thread.
That's the design, isn't it, Jane?
Yes.
It's designed to help us to awaken. It's inviting us to start
Mm,
to discover what have been our old patterns and how we
mm,
can start to forge new paths where we step more fully and completely and activate our potential, what's inside of us through this process. And birth is one of those windows because it's so intense. It's painful, it's big sensations. It's requiring us to walk into the mystery. We don't know what's ahead. We can't control it. At best, we can influence it. But it's inviting us to walk on the wild side of our inner nature and discover what we have. I'll tell you a quick story.
mm,
Um, I've been doing hypnotherapy now since 2018, so for about 7 years, and I love it because it really starts to get into the back end of the computer and really to look at and bring to conscious awareness some of the old patterns, wounds, traumas, however you want to describe it. And with my pregnant women who come and see me, and it's a process called RTT that I do with them. And I go in, sometimes they come in and they go, I've loved the course, but I just feel like there's some stuff that's stuck and I really need some
mm,
help. And this year, I remember just really
mm,
being so surprised by having three pregnant women come to me, and we went in with the same question: what is it that could get in the way of this woman birthing calmly, gently, lovingly under all circumstances? That was what we went in on. And with each woman, she had a different profile or different baggage that she would have brought into the birth process that she had the opportunity in that moment to start to bring to conscious awareness, to give her the opportunity to grow beyond those patterns and make new choices for herself. Now, every one of those women ended up having very straightforward, uncomplicated births, which is really interesting. It's a small sample size. I'd like to play around with this more, but when we really give ourselves the opportunity to get into what it is that is within our psyche, that is wanting to emerge, that is wanting to show itself to us. When we're open and ready and the timing is right, and birth does give you that bit of a deadline, it sort of
mm.
accentuates it, then there's a lot of opportunities for growth and healing. Tell me about your,
Absolutely.
yeah, tell me
Well,
about
I
your
just,
experience in that.
yeah, well, I wanted to say, to add to that, that
Mm,
our experience of birth is not something random.
yeah,
Our experience of birth, like every rite of passage, and I feel like if we use that map, it makes so much more sense. So
mm,
every rite of passage, so we're focusing on childbirth here, our experience is like a readout of our mindset, our beliefs, attitudes, and fears, which is what you've just been
yeah,
talking about, a way to help women sift through and sort
mm,
through and let go of or heal or prepare, knowing that.
yeah,
And then so because it's like a readout of our mindset, it's actually the our experience is like the culmination of our life thus far. We
Mm,
have the birth we need to have to teach us what we need to learn about ourselves to take us to the next place on our journey, which in this case will be mothering.
yeah,
And so, I really believe, and through my experience, have seen it over and over and over, that the birth teaches us what we need to learn. And it may not be what we even knew we needed to learn.
yeah.
I'll share my own experience in a minute because that just came, like, in terms of who I was at that time, it was kind of like out of the blue.
Mm,
But, with what I know now, I know what that meant. But the other thing I just want to add here in the term in terms of birth being a teacher, that's a process to figure out what the teaching is, of course, but the quality that we need, the quality we learn about ourselves in birthing the baby, and it could be that it's not actually the birth that's the biggest teacher, the
yeah,
conception. Like we have so many women with infertility or seeking assisted reproductive technologies. So, that could be the biggest thing that happened in the whole story.
yeah,
Or the pregnancy, like someone gets like, sick and it has to be in rest in bed. Like that's a huge thing to happen. Could be the birth, or it could be the postnatal experience that holds the
mm,
biggest teaching. So it's not just about the birth,
nice.
it's the
Yes.
whole story.
Because it's a
And
path, isn't it? It's not, we try to isolate these things and we make birth bigger, but it's part of the path that we have to walk in
yeah.
order to change, in order to be the mother. And the mother is a bigger version of the woman. She's, bigger on every level because she has to move beyond her own needs into the needs of a newborn.
Totally, whether she
Yeah,
wants to or not,
yeah,
actually.
yeah.
And that, in and of itself, can bring up all our childhood
Huge
trauma.
things. Yeah, it
But I
does.
just wanted to add that the thing that the quality, the whatever it is that the birth teaches the person, the woman, is the quality she needs to bring to mothering that baby.
Yeah.
Because whilst birth is the teacher, the baby is the continuum of that
Yes,
teaching.
yes, yes. So true. Can I tell you a story about my auntie who had 15 children?
Oh my goodness.
I've shared this on the podcast before, but of course, when you become a childbirth educator, you're going to want to talk to your auntie who's had 15 children, right? And I said to
Yes.
my auntie, I said, tell me about your births. And she said, everyone was different. And I thought, surely after seven or so, you'd just open your legs and out they'd fly. But no, she talked about her last three and how different. Then she made this comment, and it just illustrates what she said so beautifully. She said, she was a very devout Catholic, so I'll use her language. She said, Tracy, I can connect that what I was going through in pregnancy and the type of birth I had, I believe that's God's way of preparing me to mother that child
Hmm.
because we are not giving birth to a piece of meat. She didn't say this, but that's my sort of reading of it. We're giving birth to a human soul, and when a soul embeds itself into your body in such an intrinsic, physiological, spiritual, like just emotional way, there's all sorts of forces at play in going on that's designed to prepare us to be ready to meet that child. And so when she told me that, I just went, when you get a big gut, oh my God, like I just heard a
Yeah.
universal truth right there.
Yes.
And it just totally changed the way I saw it. And that's when I got less focused on the type of birth and much more focused on what's this journey inviting
Mm.
women to learn. And when I looked at my own births, I could see so clearly that with my first son, when I was pregnant with him, I had a lot of energy, he was a lovely big baby. He was in the breech position. I was in with an obstetrician, thought he was the best person in the world until about 38 weeks when he started to project fear about my birth. And I thought, oh, this is wrong. It just felt wrong, which then led me to finding a second opinion from another doctor who gave me a totally different view of the same situation. And that then also led me to finding myself an independent midwife who was the one who held space for me to go through that rite of passage, that change, to be ready for Sam. It was a strong birth. It was a fast birth. He came out, he roared like a lion. And he was this, just force of nature who I couldn't control from the very beginning. So that whole journey with my first son was about me surrendering into what is. So I couldn't control this. It was about tapping into my instincts, and it was about pushing against my own self limitations to what I thought I could do, to what I actually could do. And my life with my oldest son has all been about boundaries, drawing boundaries for him. And he's the sort of kid that just pushes and pushes and pushes. And I had to get firmer and firmer and firmer about what was okay and what wasn't. And also to know when to yield to his will, allowing him his own life path. But I can see so clearly, I can connect the dots from the experiences I was having in pregnancy to the type of birth I had to who Sam is, who's now almost 30 years old and having his first child, which is pretty special. Yeah, yeah. So I'm
You're
about
gonna
to
be a
enter, yeah,
grandma.
I'm about to enter grandma land. But
Oh.
and I could give you the same stories with all of my four children. So it's such a powerful insight that little one to really appreciate the true complexity and I think incredible intelligence
Mm.
to the system of creation, how we create life. Yeah,
Yeah, and then to just add to that, which is like the inner journey,
yeah,
the physiological journey, and the
yeah,
fact that we're mammals and we have certain needs, particular needs, to be able to, facilitate a physiological birth. And the way that it's set up in institutions, it's not those basic needs of privacy, to be undisturbed and unobserved and to feel safe on
yeah,
an animal level, not on an intellectual level, although that's clearly an important thing and
yeah,
obvious, but also the animal level, because I think that gets forgotten,
yeah,
that, without those basic needs, it's not necessarily going to unfold in its most natural way, which would have it hurt less and take less time.
yeah,
Birth
yeah.
will work and all the interventions and the fuss and the control and whatnot, but, it usually just takes longer and hurts more.
Mm,
And
mm,
it's not to criticize any birth that does that, because that will be the birth that's required for ultimately, if we stick with the process and use birth as a teacher, it can unravel the
mm,
unravel our lives. It
yeah,
can show us all the different things that have happened up until this point, and even before we were born in our red thread, that are impacting us.
mm,
It's this is how I refer to the shamanic dimensions, the interconnectedness of everything.
mm,
And like this is not some weird new age kind of way of looking at stuff. It's like the Buddha says, paraphrasing the Buddha, if you want to understand why you are where you are, look where you've come from. And
yeah,
that's the same with everything. It's all cause and effect.
yeah,
And we've just been led to believe in this modern patriarchal culture that our bodies don't work, that they're unreliable, unpredictable, messy, and we'll do better if it's controlled by experts. And that's the same for every single rite of passage right now, which is
mm,
tragic.
mm,
So I think that that's something, like I do a lot of work in the menopause world and area now, and I think I bring a lens to that is different to everybody else, because I'm as a midwife, I can see a birth when I see one. I can recognize a birth when I see one. And I can see that the menopausal journey for women is like the replay of everything that's happened before. So, like, in terms of a heads up for everybody having babies right now, pay attention, because what you're learning from your births is what you need to remember when you go through menopause.
mm. I love that you've talked about that. I'm post-menopause now. I'm 57. And when I started getting symptoms, I automatically could not imagine why I needed to medicate or why and what I needed. I didn't that I needed to fix this. And I thought, hang on, my body has been an incredible creator of life. I've breastfed my babies. Why would it all of a sudden become dysfunctional in menopause? I couldn't understand the common narrative, which caused me to go digging. And it made, when I looked at my symptoms, it made total sense of what those symptoms were inviting me to do. I love
Yes.
seeing hot flushes as power surges, because when I first hit menopause, for a woman who never used used to swear, all of a sudden I was, my husband said to me at one point, he said, Tracy, do you realize how often you're using the word stupid? I'd be like, oh, that's stupid. Oh, what a stupid question. I was like, I was spitting out my anger at every thought, and the F bomb was dropping here, there, and everywhere. And I thought, what a great word. It packs a punch. I'm going to swear. So I was swearing just like unapologetically. So there was this new surge of, I don't know,
Power.
intolerance, power, don't suffer fools, not going to do what not going
Yeah.
to do what I'm told, like just pushing against any
Mm,
type of rigid sort of structures and things that were trying to tell me how to do what to do and how to do it. I just
good
pushed
on
back
you.
against all of that. But the biggest lesson that menopause taught me is how to truly, truly rest and to really honor what my body was telling me. Because when I tried to push hard and work too hard, I
Mm,
suffered the consequences so strongly and so quickly,
mm,
actually. But the
mm,
minute I sort of let go, the hot flushes eased, the volume went down, I could sleep
mm,
better, all of
mm,
those things. So I felt
mm,
like just what
mm.
you're saying, it was teaching me to change a few little patterns of work hard, head down, bum up, that sort of thing, to just kind of floating through my days with a much greater ease. I'm still learning it. It's
Mm.
not like it just
Yeah.
happens, but I could see what the invitation was.
Mm. And how connected that teaching
Yeah.
requirement is to what we should have already learned in the menstrual cycle.
Yeah, exactly.
So the menstrual cycle, our initiation into our fertility that results in us having our babies or whatever else we birth metaphorically, then prepares us for menopause. So, like it's all connected. I think that's the
Mm,
biggest thing. It would be
yeah.
amazing for everybody to realize that these like in psychology, these phases of our lives, developmental phases or stages, are actually rites of passage
Mm,
that transform us. And if we bring that level of awareness to it, then we can understand why we feel like that, why we think like
yeah.
that, and also why what's arising emotionally, mentally, spiritually, why that is, and make the sense of that, given we can look at the whole story holistically and like, this is your life. This is
Mm,
your life unfolding for all the reasons that it does. And of course, that then requires a story to make sense of why, your life would have a meaning or a purpose, or that you would learn things in your life and all that kind of stuff. So,
mm,
there needs to be some sort of a framework to understand all of this stuff through.
yeah.
And it's different to the medical framework that
Mm,
basically all our portals of power as women, the menstrual cycle, childbirth, and menopause, have all been pathologized,
yeah.
medicalized,
Yeah.
weaponized against us, and monetized. And so
Monetize, that's a big one.
yeah,
We are a
like
market. Mm,
we are a huge market. Exactly. And so when without skepticism or, like making up stories, it's a reality.
mm,
We live in
mm,
a capitalist culture and we're all markets,
yeah.
for products. Like just on menopause for a moment again, menopause is currently a $16 billion industry and growing,
Wow.
and that's just menopause.
Mm,
And that's because in 2030, there'll be 1.2 billion menopausal women on the planet. So it's a
God
massive
help
number.
us.
Yeah. And exactly. Imagine if they're all woken up with their mission and their purpose in life.
Yeah,
That would
yeah,
be incredible.
yeah,
So, there's lots to be done to help women to wake up to what's going on because,
yeah.
we need to be the women the earth needs now. And it's not
Mm,
those who just don't we need to trust our bodies, we need to trust life, we need to trust birth, we need to trust death, and we
yeah.
need to trust that it's not a it's an unfolding and our life is valuable and important, and we need to lean in, especially at the uncomfortable parts, because that's where the teachings happen.
Yeah. So let's drill this down really specifically, because I know you do a lot of rituals around these as well. which I think is so rich and something our culture has lost, which is very sad because ritual is what brings meaning and it's what gets us to pay attention to the deeper world within us.
Mm.
What do you think, Jane, women can do listening to this? And most of them are pregnant women or birth nerds like me. What do you think we can do to um, invite women to really start to tune in to that level of awareness, to really look at what is this? What is my path? Because every woman's path is different. What is my path inviting me to learn, be, do, see, feel that
Mm.
perhaps is emerging
Yeah.
as a dormant force that's been inside of you, but it's actually bringing you into a greater level of hugeness.
Mm. So this is what we would call the inner journey.
Mm.
And I just wanted to like read a little bit from my book, 10
Oh,
Moons, The Inner
lovely.
Journey of
Yes.
Pregnancy. That's me with pregnant with my last baby.
Oh, beautiful.
And like the book's called 10 Moons, The Inner Journey of Pregnancy, Preparation for Natural
So I'm
Birth.
asking the right person that question then, aren't I?
Right. And just going to read from this little bit here, just on page 7, what is an inner journey?
Oh,
A journey concerned with the spirit, the soul, the sacred. Your inner journey of pregnancy is there waiting for you. It is a journey of self-discovery and trust. Listen with the ears of your heart to the call from within that reminds you of your divine nature and the sacredness of birth. Be guided by the goddess to a deeper knowing part of you. Let go into this place and be you. This is the inner journey of pregnancy. So when I work with women to help them figure out what their inner journey of pregnancy is, it's it's what's going on through the process. So it's what's going on emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, obviously physical, and all the stories and that we're telling ourselves
yeah.
and how we feel. And this is a thing. Like, it's even got a proper name now. And it's called matrescence. And
Mm,
I imagine you've spoken to your
yeah.
listeners about matrescence before. So matrescence, the becoming a mother and the being a mother, but very related to its previous life stage, rite of passage of adolescence.
Yeah.
And that happens for girls and women at menarche, puberty and menarche, where we become an adult, where we become a fertile woman. So adolescence, matrescence, and just a little bubble on the side, I've renamed menopause
Mm.
to be in keeping with these as sagescence,
Oh,
the
I like
becoming a
that.
wise woman. Yeah. So,
Mm.
like to depathologize it. I don't, that's not the right
Yeah.
word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
so this inner journey is around pregnancy and like matrescence, this life stage, this rite of passage happens at conception. And
Yeah.
maybe even before, right? With the dreaming of the baby or the hearing of the baby, the soul baby talking to you, as my teacher Janine Pavati Baker used to say.
Mm.
So this is not something that we're making up. It's a thing. It's a developmental stage, a rite of passage. And so the inner journey just reveals itself as it goes. And fundamentally, if we look at what's arising, like in all my circle work, the two questions: how are you feeling and what's arising? And
Mm.
so that's, what's arising means what's coming up for you now, or what are you thinking about, or what story are you telling yourself, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And that we can see as like a tip of the iceberg. And it's the thing we can see or hear, which will be the tip of the iceberg. And you know how icebergs work. There's the stuff above the sea level and there's the
Yeah.
biggest part below. So
Yeah.
as a metaphor, the iceberg indicates that whatever we see has a big cause down here.
Yeah.
And most of our problems are related to our own childhood and our previous rites of passage.
Yeah.
Because if we, and if that's like, oh, whatever, but we, the cycle of nature is playing out in our lives, just like it's playing out in the earth. We are as if the earth. We
Mm.
go through the same cycles as the earth, and our rites of passage are just like the changes in the seasons, so to
Mm.
speak. in our inner seasons. And so these tips of the iceberg are the clues for what we need to be with, or in specifically what this pregnancy, therefore this baby, is bringing to the mother. Like, because we don't just gestate and grow a baby, we also grow the mother this baby has
Yes.
come for, the mother this baby needs. And when we give birth, we don't just give birth to a baby, we give birth to the new mother version of us.
Mm.
Whether, or the mother, if that's the first time, or the mother of 2 or 3 or
Yeah.
17. So, as your beautiful auntie said, everyone is
Yeah.
different. So,
Yeah.
it's a rite of passage each time. It's not like you do the one rite of passage and then it's on repeat. It's,
Mm.
evidence from your auntie. But all of this experience, this inner journey, which is really about your red thread, your own birth imprint, your childhood trauma, your first period, your menarche, your first sexual experience, than
Mm.
any other pregnancies. All of this is leading up to wherever you are right now, pregnant or just had a baby or whatever. That is what this is the result of.
Mm.
And it's in order to prepare for this, like to even take your attention to that. How do the women in your family give birth? And it
Mm.
doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to do the same thing, but that's what you've been led to believe.
Yeah.
And I think the other really important things that we need to do is pay attention to the fears that arise for us during
Yes.
the journey, because they're things to acknowledge and not get into that, oh, don't think about it or you'll make it happen. Like, do think about it. Bring your fears to the surface and acknowledge them. Half the time when we do that, they go away because you think,
Mm.
oh, what? I don't fear that. But it's kind of like a cultural thing or a family thing. And then to when we pay attention to our fears, it actually kind of reveals our belief system. And one of the things that often happens around becoming a mother or being pregnant and birthing is that our belief systems need to be updated because we're carrying, whatever we read in a magazine 20 years ago or whatever, somebody said in your childhood or whatever's on social media.
Yeah.
Like we are
Yeah.
so impacted by so many things. So our belief system, we have the opportunity to like get in the control seat and decide what we're going to believe in. We may need to update our belief system as
Mm.
well. So like that, and sexual healing and healing any previous birth trauma, because like women who've had sexual trauma, particularly sexual abuse as children, like I'm sorry to say this, but it's a thing that women can have flashbacks from sexual trauma during childbirth, because sadly many people, when they're behaving unconsciously as carers, will use similar words to what may have been used in traumatic experiences that then trigger flashbacks, and the woman just goes into shutdown because she's not feeling safe anymore because she's remembering her trauma. Now
Yeah.
that could be sexual trauma, it could be previous birth trauma.
Mm.
Like, so if we like realize what's going on, there's so much we can do to prepare.
Yeah.
So that's what I really, want women to know, is that it's not this isolated random what's going to happen. It's predictable, but it may not be predictable if you don't know yourself to a level that you can see what will replay. But don't worry, birth will teach you.
Mm.
And the other thing I wanted to add about the impact of the red thread is that, and most of your listeners will probably know this, but when you're pregnant with a daughter, from 20 weeks gestation, so that's halfway through the pregnancy, all that baby girl's eggs form in her ovaries. So, pregnant with a daughter, from halfway through the pregnancy on, you have all the grandchildren that you would ever have from that daughter in your womb, in her ovary. So,
Wow.
you, me, all of us,
Mm.
we were in our grandmother's womb, in our mother's ovary, in our most prima materia, which doesn't mean nothing. It means the first way we existed as a
Yeah.
premature egg. So we experienced energetically in that form of us, which is our basis, the experience our grandmother had of being pregnant with our mother for the second half. We were there for at the birth our grandmother had of our mother, And then we were in our mother's bodies from that halfway through the pregnancy all the way up until we were the egg that ripened, ovulated, was conceived, and then we gestated in our mother's womb and for however long, and then we left our mother's body when we were born, and then we were fed in whatever way, completely absorbing everything our mother is thinking and feeling and processing, not just in the breastfeeding, but the whole time.
Yeah.
So there's a huge impact from our red thread that I don't think anybody is really even thinking about.
Mm,
And it's not a curse. It's something to realize and do the inner work of healing.
mm,
And the thing is that our births and our rites of passage, that's where the healing opportunities come
yeah.
at that fork in the road thing.
There's nothing random about creation, and there's nothing,
No.
and it's so to be respected. And we, science tries to measure, quantify, identify, but some of these things that Jane's talking about is beyond that. But what we do know and what we can prove is the impact of imprinting. And imprinting is Mother Nature's way of preparing that child for life outside the womb by allowing the mother to biologically communicate and energetically and in any other way it gets received, communicate to that baby in utero her experience of life in order to prepare the baby for when they're born. So all of that gets coded into the system. And what Jane said there is so profound and a tad bit scary. But the other side of it is we receive incredibly powerful, useful tools and not tools, imprints from our mother also that will help us in
Yeah,
life.
the strengths.
Exactly. It's not all limiting,
No,
but
and it's like I come from a long line of women who
yeah,
whatever, you know?
whatever, finish that
Yeah.
sentence. But
Mm,
it's something that is worth getting curious about. And what Jane's really highlighted there is the power of paying attention to what's emerging within you, whether it be thoughts, feelings, fears, um, even circumstances, what you've created in your life around this place. Are you really paving the way for you to step fully into motherhood, or are you just seeing it as a little thing you're doing on the side of a very busy career? What is your life teaching you right now? And to turn your attention inwards and to start to really um, pay respects to what this process is that you're going through. That's so powerful. Jane,
mm.
tell us a little bit, because I really don't want to finish this without going to this place. A lot of women, when they're pregnant, they have things like, baby showers and reveals and all this stuff, which,
Mm,
is a good excuse to get lots of presents and shit like that. But that's not always what we need. Tell us
mm,
more about blessing ways and
mm.
how we can ritualize and invite um, that woman to be well prepared for birth.
Yeah, great. Now, I think we need to stop saying blessing ways because that's
Hmm.
a First Nations American term that isn't what we're doing when we're doing what we're calling a blessing way. So,
Okay,
I'm calling it a mother circle, mother blessing, mother blessing. But
beautiful.
the
I love the
point of
word
it,
blessing because
yeah, totally.
it's non-religious and it can be it's really positive intent.
Totally. Yeah.
Mm,
So a mother blessing is like a more, um, shall we say, more kind of ritualized
yeah.
um, baby shower.
Hmm.
And the focus of the mother blessing is more that it's the community gathering to thank that mother for bringing a new member to the community,
Hmm.
and a time when the people who are coming, who would be as if like the inner circle and the friends and the relatives and whatnot, but it's it's a time when the mother can feel the support that's available to her. It might be the time when whoever says, "I'll walk the dog," or I'll come around and fold the washing," or "I'll do the shopping," or "I'll do the play dates with the siblings." So it's kind of a ritualized way of cementing village, shall we say, for
Nice.
that particular rite of passage.
Hmm.
And so, it could still be games and gifts and all of that, but the focus is on supporting the mother to bring the baby, like that. So that that orientation has a different energy. And I'm not wanting to disrespect the fun baby shower and all of that kind of thing,
Mm.
because I think, combine the elements and then you're going to serve the modern woman, right? Because that's what's the way it works.
Yeah.
And then the other rituals that I really recommend and I talk about in that book, 10 Moons, is with your inner circle. So that would be those who are like supporting you, whether actually coming to the birth or postnatally or on the not actually coming but being at the in your house if you're going to hospital to look after the other children. So your inner support circle, to have an opening circle, so to speak. So if we see birth as a ceremony, then there's the opening circle. So everybody who's part of that inner circle, and I'm not trying to be like you're in or you're out. You're like, your
Yeah.
support people, your partner, your midwife, your doula, like whoever, to
Mm.
come to an opening circle where you and your partner or you by yourself just talk to everybody and explain what your needs are, what you want to be, what you want to ask them to do or not do. Like actually, it's really important to screen your support people. You don't want people
Mm.
bringing fears to your birth that are going to complicate it, because fear is catchy. So
Yeah.
you want to also get ready with everybody and make sure that your support people are going to be able to support you as opposed to, like not, for example. Like
Mm.
the golden rule, don't invite somebody to your birth to heal their birth experience,
Yeah.
like it's really important. And also the consideration, just as a little side bubble, to really talk to your partner. Do they want to come to the birth?
Mm.
Like that's a big conversation that often doesn't happen, that can cause all kinds of drama if the actual answer to that is no, I'm too scared or whatever.
Yeah.
Like there's an opportunity there that is often not taken. And like, we need to look at the history of when partners, particularly well, men, male partners started coming to birth back in the 60s, and that's when the intervention just started to increase.
Mm.
Hello, Dont, somebody we both know and love, and
Yeah.
sad that he's just died. He had a lot to say about men at birth, and I'm not saying that men shouldn't be at birth. I wouldn't have
Mm.
been wanted to give birth without my man there,
Yeah.
but it's another consideration.
Yeah.
But back to this opening circle, you want to know what everybody's bringing to your birth,
Hmm.
because you don't want to, well, you may often midwives, doulas, whatever in a birth space will see the need for a particular person to step out for a while so that,
Mm.
whatever can happen can settle down or whatever. So we know that everybody who's at a birth is contributing to the energy and therefore the outcome. So bottom line, opening circle, like make sure you're inviting who you want to invite. And the other clue is don't invite anybody to your birth that you're not prepared to do a poo in front of or have an orgasm in front of. Because if you're not prepared to do that in front of the people you're inviting, you won't. And that
Mm.
may inhibit the whole process.
Yeah.
And then there's the birth, and that's like, ta-da, and all its things. And
Yeah.
then there's the postpartum, which is like I'm so happy in the last couple of decades that the postpartum has really stepped into her power, the
Mm.
fourth trimester, the golden
Yeah.
month. People are starting to realize that it actually matters what
Mm.
you do after the baby. You need to rest. And again, we should have learned this from the menstrual cycle already, but that hasn't happened in the majority. So postpartum support, and then when you're ready, a closing circle with that
Mm.
opening group, like to whatever you want. The options could be debriefing, it could be to have a party. Like back in the day, that would be timed around when the photos came back from the chemist, whereas now that's like instant. And then, other rituals to bring closure. Well, we've all heard about closing the bones and stuff like that, that
Mm.
wonderful Mayan practice. And I really recommend burying the placenta
Mm.
in, and, there's lots to talk about that. And I've written lots about this on my website, janehardwickecollings.com, so it won't take up too much time. But the placenta is an important part of this process
Yeah.
and what you do with it. And there's many things to do with it, including eating.
Mm.
And then just the other basic things, rituals of journaling and then, in pregnancy, to see what is arising, because you're
Yeah.
busy people, probably
Yeah.
got a job or some other children or a busy life, that keeping up with yourself through journaling is a good practice. And creating an altar, which would be just a space that somewhere where if you've got little people, they can't drag the precious things down and break them. So somewhere, and if you haven't got little children, then you can just put it in the pride perfect place.
Yeah.
But to visit it daily as a ceremonial ritualized check-in,
Mm.
like, how am I feeling today? What is arising? And
Mm.
then being with what is in all the ways that we already said. And then the other rituals or practices. So a ritual is a practice that you do over and over, right?
Yeah.
And a ceremony is a combination of many rituals to honor a particular experience or event. So there are ways to, like, I'm a big proponent of the shamanic drum journey, which is basically using the drum to do a self-guided meditation to connect with whatever, and
Mm.
in this way, I recommend to connect with the baby in the womb.
Yeah.
And like, it's self-hypnosis sort of a process as well. And then just practicing meditation. I think meditation is excellent preparation for birth because it shows you the kind of headspace and therefore external environment
Mm.
that contributes to creating a positive birth zone.
Mm.
Like if you can practice meditation and therefore the path inward, that's where it's really good to go when you're in labor, into that inward space.
Mm.
And even with regardless of what's happening, if it all, if intervention starts happening, you still have that place inside you, this inner sanctuary
Yeah.
to go to where no one can disturb you. So we
Yeah.
can take charge in that way. And the other thing that's so helpful for all of us in every life stage is our women's circle, where we share and listen and all of that. And the
Mm.
other really great practice for preparing for actually giving birth is practicing orgasms.
Mm.
And the point of that being that birth is a sexual event, obviously. And to quote Ina May Gaskin, what gets the baby in there gets the
Gets the
baby
baby
out.
out.
So to
Exactly.
recognize
And it's
that
true, orgasm is fueled by oxytocin and contractions are fueled by oxytocin. What Jane said
totally,
is absolutely true. Yeah.
yeah, and the same level of surrender that we need
Mm.
to do to have an orgasm,
Yeah.
which, is a bit of an art,
Yeah. Yeah.
is the same level of surrender we need to do to have a baby. So
Yeah.
I think that that's a good practice so that meditation and orgasm helps you locate the zone,
Mm.
and also and orgasm helps you practice staying there. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's also the building to an orgasm, I mean,
Mm.
like to
Mm.
stay with it. Like, if you're heading towards an orgasm and you start thinking about all the things to fear about it, it's not going to
Mm.
happen, right?
Yeah, it's going to stop. Mm.
Yeah, and so the practice of that, that's right, is also, I think, an easy clue for partners who are thinking, what can I do to help? How am I going to know what to do? That if
Mm.
they realize that it's connected to that, that
Yeah.
how can they help their woman stay in that zone? I imagine they probably think they're kind of good at that. So that would be a good clue.
They would hope that they were good at
They
that.
would hope, or else they can practice. Yeah.
Yeah, good
So
opportunity to practice.
that's right. So I think
Wow.
that this whole focus that
Mm.
we're both coming from is to really make this experience mother and baby centric,
Yeah.
not expert centric.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is too easy to fall into that trap. Recently, a very special group of my mothers who have done some of my inner work in small groups, and one of them was having a baby, and we did a beautiful ceremony for her where we all brought our favorite pieces of wisdom, mothering wisdom, and we put it all in a book for her. And when we gave her the wisdom, we also put a bead on a thread, and for her to wear during the birth process. And we also did a ceremony with lighting a candle, and we had our own candles. And when she went into labor, she texted us all and we lit our candles and she wore her beads. And she said, being able to draw on the wisdom of you all and just know that
Mm,
this had been sanctified by a group of women that she really respects and loves her and wants the very best for her, just put her into a beautiful space of surrender. And
mm,
these are some of the, that's what it can look like in real time, where we can create ceremony and ritual around a woman who we love, and to acknowledge and draw in the people who can support her during that time. Jane, we're going to have to finish it now. Is there anything you want to finish with? This has been such a rich conversation, certainly hasn't disappointed.
Well, I think that I would just say that for those preparing for pregnancy,
Yeah.
so haven't conceived yet, to
Mm,
just practice your conscious menstrual cycling,
yeah, right.
because that's preparation for birth. If you can develop the body literacy that the menstrual cycle provides, then you're more likely to be able to know what your body decipher the messages your body gives you
Mm,
in pregnancy and birth. Like you and I know that if women are left alone to their own devices when they're in labor, they get themselves into all, if they feel safe and undisturbed and unobserved,
yeah,
they get themselves into all manner of positions that you wouldn't have even known to suggest
yeah,
on purpose
yeah,
to help the baby move down, or
because
their
that,
pelvis open
yeah,
sideways or whatever. So I really believe that the menstrual cycle has the opportunity to teach us how to listen to our body in
mm,
preparation for birth and menopause.
and everything else. And what did
What?
you call sagescence? What a
Sagescence.
takeaway. Love
Mm,
that term. I'm going to adopt that.
thank you. Please do. It only took 70 years for matrescence to sort of become a known
Yeah.
thing. So,
Well,
you
you
know,
brought sage essence very quickly after that. So that's great, Jane. Thank you.
thank you.
And for all of you listening out there, I hope this has really opened your minds to possibilities of that deep inner intelligence you have within your system, that inner world, your experiences, everything you're bringing into your life. There's nothing random about any of it, and invite it all to come into the surface of your awareness and find people who can support you, you know, listen to what your body's telling you, respond to that, and do your best to listen to let go of some of the cultural, what we're being marinated in out there, which is focusing on the wrong things around birth. We're focusing on the stuff, we're focusing on, how we look, or, what we need to eat. And I mean, some of that's important. However, there's a much richer thing going on, and Jane's really highlighted that for us today. So I want to thank her from the depths of my heart for bringing this level of substance to this podcast. And I hope you are all enjoying this. We're going to take a little bit of a break after this podcast over Christmas time, and we'll get some more beautiful stories for you next